Rusty, we haven't seen you in so long. It's, can't read each other yet. Oh. Okay, all right. Joel, join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're gonna shift a little over for you, Dan. All right. Yeah.
Wrap yourself in.
Exactly. So, all right, welcome, everybody. I'll call the Damariscotta Select Board to order for May 7th. And everybody's here tonight. It's been a little while since we've all, landed in the same place. So, been busy season. So, before we get started, I think Michael's here to a little bit later on. We'll bring him in. He's not on the agenda, but we'll sneak you in. We'll make an exception for you.
Sooner than later.
All right. So, but with that, if you folks want to get started, we can go through minutes. You'll get April 2nd or any additions, changes, anything noteworthy, anybody?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of April 2nd and April 16th.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Here, second. Andrew's going to second. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
They look good.
All right. How about the 16th, folks?
He did both. I
Oh,
did
you
both.
did both. Sorry. I'll abstain. I didn't hear you do
I
both.
read them both.
I got you. Yeah. I called April 2nd, but you moved the ball. Yeah, I'm going to abstain. I was absent for the 16th. So,
Oh, yeah, you weren't here either for this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I wasn't here either.
then Tom wasn't there for
I'm
the.
sorry.
That was the best meeting of the year, though.
Let's start over. April. I'm going to move April 2nd.
Okay.
Second.
I'm going to second, but he's going to abstain on the vote. So, okay.
No, that's the one I missed.
April
Second.
2nd. No, you missed the 16th.
We missed the 16th.
You missed the 16th.
All right. So I second on
You got redo.
Yeah. All right. I moved the second. And somebody seconded the second.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor? That's all of us, right?
I'll move the 16th.
Okay, you move the 16th.
I'll second.
All right, good enough. All those in favor?
Nope.
I'm going to abstain. Yeah, we were absent. Tom.
Three and two abstentions.
3 to 2 abstain. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Wow, we're starting out that way. All right, let's move on. Let's try some financials now. See what happens. So, payroll warrant 51. Did you get a chance to look at everything?
I'll move that.
All right, Josh moves that. I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, and we've got accounts payable number 52.
I'll move that as well.
Thank you, Josh.
Second.
Tom's gonna second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, so moving right along, citizen comments and general correspondence. I think we have a couple of folks in the audience here that are patiently waiting out back. Would you like to come on up? Sure. Yep. You've got something because we'll get into right on the, yeah. So we'll, come on up. We'll just have you come up here on the hot seat and just, if you state your name and your town, and the floor is yours.
My name's Laura Bergon. I live at 62 High Street in Damariscotta. My main focus to come here tonight is to see if this board has had any discussion about the hate crimes on High Street.
We didn't know there was hate crimes
I
on
didn't
High
think-
Street.
Me neither.
Yeah, unaware.
I'm not aware.
No.
Okay. On February 10th, I'm really going to shorten this because I have tons of information. I came out of my house, and most of you know, I live right on the corner of High Street and Bristol Road. And there was these two huge strips of poop, not animal. So I came to the town office and I talked to Joanne and I said, would I have somebody come and do a welfare check? Because a car had been snowed in at the house next door, and I thought maybe she was sick or something and let the dog out. They had a big dog. Anyway, that was the beginning. it escalated from there. And my husband's been quite sick, and I had to take him to the doctors 3 days a week. And for several weeks, we would come home and our entire walkway from the steps to the back door was full of poop. I'm talking buckets of poop. Animal, human, you name it. And I lived on a farm all my life and I know poop. So what do? We were scared to go in our house. We didn't know if maybe they had been in the house. I didn't want my husband to slip on it going down the stairs. It was winter, February. And so we said, well, should we report it? Should we say nothing to see if it escalates or what the story is going to be? So one Sunday I came out of my house and there was a dog. He just pooped on my back steps. So I came back to the town office and I asked them if they had an animal control. And she gave me the number and I called her. And then things got really bad. Really bad. So I can't go into all the details here because there are so many. Many.
Florence, can I not interrupt you, but have you reported anything or brought law enforcement involved?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I went to Warwick. And I sat with him for 3/4 of an hour.
When was that?
In his office in February.
Yeah, okay.
And I said, I asked someone to come and do a welfare check. I figured they'd get back to me as to what was going on next door. I was really quite concerned the car had been snowed in for quite a few weeks. And I said, they didn't come until nighttime and they never got back to me. They never came and told me. I said, I know the police were there and I know they got stuck on the hill in the driveway. And he goes, oh, that was me. And I said, okay. And then things got really bad. I told him who the two people were that I thought were involved, 2 women, 2 girls, one lives up back and one lives up High Street. And I said, I want this reported as a hate crime. I don't know what else to call it. With all this poop in my yard, week after week. I mean, I don't know where they're getting all of it. And it was winter, so we had to come down the stairs. Couldn't walk in the snowbanks. Anyway. The chief decided to take up with these 2 girls. And every time there was an incident, the chief showed up, 6:40 in the morning, 6:30 at night. They evidently had his personal phone number. And they called him. And I don't know what they were saying about me or whatever. Anyway, I walk in the back of my house, have for 32 years since I moved here. And the chief came and made me move my car. Okay, I did it. And then things got really bad. We were terrorized. So fast forward Oh, that night when he made me move my car. He didn't really talk to me. He went right by me. I looked up, she was trying to ram me from the front and he drove up in the back, so I was blocked in. And, he said, I'm not going to play this game. And I thought, my God, this isn't a game. This is serious. So I got a lawyer. And I did everything. I didn't approach them. I didn't approach these girls, nothing. I never said a word to them. I said, I'll let the police and animal control handle it. I never, ever approached them, never, nothing. So he told them that night to file harassment charges against me, which they did. And this is how they worded the harassment charges. On the advice of Chief Warwick, we are filing these harassment charges against you. For what? I mean, they had such a myriad of things in there, it was unbelievable. So we go to court. On April 9th for this harassment. We were there for 3 hours. And the last thing the judge said to me is, do you believe that Lucinda Smith put all of this in your yard? And I said, yes, because Kristen just said she did. Plus, animal control had come and yelled at me and said, the girls want to make nice now, and the dogs are fully licensed. I said they weren't when I reported them. And he said the date for the hearing has been moved up from the 2nd to the 9th. And I go, well, I haven't been notified. I haven't. I was astounded. Because he came at 8 o'clock on a Friday morning to my house. And there was nothing in the harassment about dogs in the first place. There was not one mention of all this poop in my yard and dogs or nothing. So we get to the hearing and Kristen pulls out her phone. She had come to my house a few days before with cookies that the chief had sent. Take Flo some cookies and she'll be okay. No, I won't. No, I won't. And by God, she had a wire. She had a concealed wire. And she played that in court. And I was furious. She had so many pictures of my property. So much. So I'm here. Anyway, they lost their harassment suit. I mean, we knew they would anyway. I want the chief fired. I want him fired. I want him.
I think this conversation should stop at this point.
Yeah,
With what's now what's being said and what's happening here.
right, we're turning
I
into
think
a,
this
yeah,
conversation should probably
I
stop.
understand,
Yeah.
but what I want to know from you is who is above the police here? I mean, what is the next step?
I am.
Town managers,
Yes,
yeah. So
yes.
there are procedural steps with like complaints, things like that. But yeah, at this point, we're all willing to listen to you. The board itself.
I understand that. I
Can't, we
understand.
act as a an appeals board. So it puts, it's a spot that we can't get into until something is looked into.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but I
Yeah.
can't go to the police. Even if something happens to me, I can't call the police.
Again, I'll
Yeah.
suggest that with what she's just raised at this point, if this
Yeah.
goes any further, I'm gonna suggest that the board not let this conversation
Yeah,
continue.
I'm fine with it. And it's not out, we're doing this for everybody's protection, okay? Because we can't, this is stuff we can't air in public without, there's a whole bunch of procedures. So we're not being disrespectful to you. And he's right. We're at a point where you have an issue and it needs to go through certain channels. And if we continue it in this venue, it creates all kinds of issues, which will come
I
back on you as
understand.
well, okay?
I understand.
Yeah, so we'll respectfully, right now, we've got a table. I wouldn't, let's not go any further with this, in this particular venue, because that's gonna create some issues. I can't give you any advice. So, because the board is asked to kind of sit, whereas we're in we work as an appeals board as well. But
I understand.
yeah,
I understand, and that's why I didn't go into all of these incidences.
right, we can't.
I didn't say
Yeah, give it like an overview, but,
I guess the next thing is there is a process
yeah,
to file a complaint, and
No,
Andy is the one to deal.
I've met with Flo and I'm happy to set up
Okay.
another time to meet. I know you've called a couple times and said the
I
messages
know,
got
and I know how busy you are, and I tried not to.
But
I,
we met a few weeks back before when
Yes,
things had come out.
yes.
So
Um,
at this point,
So-
as the board, we can't do anything.
I
It's- but-
understand that, but
but
I
please-
just want to know
please-
what my,
And Andy's the personnel manager, and
and I haven't. I haven't been, he's been busy with
Yeah.
the parking lot and everything, and I understand, and I appreciate. I appreciate him listening, and he knows,
but that would be your next step with
but maybe I need to go to the state, I don't know. It's very serious.
I'm sorry you have to go through this.
It's terrible. My husband is sick. We're 87 and 84 years old.
we thank you for coming in.
I'll follow up with you.
Listening, but Andy's, we'll follow up with you, okay? No. Right. Okay, Andy, we have a pilot, right?
The Mid-Coast Friends meeting had sent their annual pilot payment in, the $425, and just sharing that letter with you.
That's great. We would say in behalf of everybody, we thank them. Yeah. So very helpful. So, all right. And well, do we want to, Michael, next?
Yeah, but just to
Yeah.
put in my update, just to mention that we had interviewed 3 candidates for the Island Fellows position. You're good, Mike. And that when I wrote this, we were anticipating to hear soon. So that person, I think we've talked briefly before, the main purpose of that fellow is to kind of assist with the comp plan implementation work. And I'll just say with that, I'll let you follow up on, because I don't know kind of where the rest of that goes.
Yeah, so thank you, Michael Martone, town planner. I wanted to come and first, I guess, let the board know, if you haven't heard, I think Andy may have shared with you that the state did find the comprehensive plan to be complete and consistent with their requirements, which is great. That was adopted back in December by the voters. There were two things that we were missing: capital improvement plan, and I think it was like 2 or 3 goals and policies. So we'll figure out how to best address those going forward. I shared with them a capital improvement plan that you all had been working on through the budget process. And I basically just kind of took the goals that they said they were missing and gave them back to them. And so they said, great, okay, you're complete. So we don't need to get into all the technical, like, well, technically what the voters approved doesn't include these two things, but we'll iron that out as we go forward. What I really, now that has happened, that state approval has happened, I want to kind of fully pivot towards implementation. And the first step in that, I think, is to discuss how. I think the comprehensive plan committee had envisioned a comprehensive plan implementation committee. And I think that kind of makes sense. It seems like that was generally, I haven't heard anybody say like that, that's not the way to do it. The state kind of expects that that's what it is, but ultimately, I think it's the select board's decision to create or direct any of this. So that's why I come here, so that we don't start running off in directions that you don't want us running off into. I'm not suggesting today that we form this implementation committee. I was talking with Andy earlier. I think probably what I think makes sense is for us to start considering what an implementation committee might look like, bring something that's kind of semi-formed back to you to say, yes, these are the groups of people that we might want to have involved. I think obviously residents are going to want to be involved if we can rope them into this. And then also there's a number of institutions in town that I think will be essential to actually implement some of this stuff. Some of it directly affects them, some of it will indirectly affect them. And so they're just institutions like the Lincoln Health, the hospital, YMCA, Coastal Rivers, Chamber of Commerce, just to name a few that were in the implementation committee, implementation matrix. But I figured I'd also start here, and that's what thoughts do you have? You're in the position of, well, A, being elected by the residents, but also you get to deal with the budget considerations, which is kind of where where this all happens or not. So
I would say content
Mhm.
experts on the major thrust of the plan, the areas of focus, to find content experts as opposed to just volunteers, people that want to participate but may not be content experts.
that I thought, in addition to the formal organizations like the hospital or Chamber of Commerce that are, I know Damariscotta residents, and whether they're business owners also, there's a wealth of people around who have knowledge and experience with all kinds of issues, especially when it comes to like natural resources and things like that. So yeah, I think that between residents and
Trouble finding them, I'm just saying that
if we gotta trick them into participating.
Yeah. So not volunteer them. So I'm just trying to connect your conversation about the Island Institute Fellows to the comp plan, to a comment in your meeting, your report about the strategic plan. And it strikes me that all three of those things are related, and I'd like to hear a little more about what the strategic plan envisions, because strategic plan sounds a lot like a comprehensive plan for a community. So
Yes, I think we're ripe for, without everything that has been priority and hasn't been able to be gotten to or completed, and for the comp plan that's just been approved and adopted and has, I think it's 30 pages of strategies and priority, goals and endeavors. And so, and there was rough timelines for those. And so a lot of boards at times, and some of you have been on boards and work for companies that have strategic plans, where we go in the next 3 years, and you kind of prioritize and focus on these core things or these tasks. And I think we should have that. You've had your annual work plans, and there's been some things on there for 10 years, business licensing. So we're going to make a stab at it this year and see how that goes. But given that the comp plan is so broad and has so many things in there, the thought would be to kind of use that as kind of like a foundation of creating a 3-year strategic work plan of the board.
yeah,
So that'll help the staff when we go into budget season. I think a lot of times we get to budget season, which is a huge piece of what we do.
Sure.
And it's like, well, we'll keep doing what we're doing. With this comp plan fresh off of adopting, being adopted by the town, I think we have a real opportunity in need to kind of take that and get a little more proactive and where are we going? So that knowing that some of these things might take 2 years to establish and start measuring, is this effective before you say it doesn't work and we get rid of it? And so on a 3-year cycle, we can start to build budgets that make a little more sense and we can see where we're going, report back to the community in a different way. It's like, well, we're here, we've been open 4 days a week and we do this and we do that, but where are we going? So I kind of see that fellow kind of being a bridge between taking that comp plan, what's been put in place, working with the implementation committee. I think one of the things that, might be useful is to kind of look at missions or purposes of implementation committees set by other towns. So we're clear, it's kind of like, what's their parameters? What are they doing? Are they advising? Are they, what is the role of that? That's a huge piece of it. Some towns might not have the staff capacity we do. We've got a lot of ambition that's in that plan that we don't have the staff capacity to do all that. So, kind of that's where I think that, taking to that next step and having that fellow kind of work with us, to work with partners, to work with the implementation committee. But yeah, where are those guardrails on that? My hope is that, we might be able to get a strategic plan put together potentially before next budget planning cycle. So that gives us until end of December pretty much. Because staff start planning their department needs December, January, and you start reviewing in February. So it's a little ambitious with everything else we have going, but I think with that capacity with the fellow, that was kind of what we teed up for a large part of their first quarter. Get familiar with the community, review the comp plan, help with the strategic planning process, whether we bring in another set of resources to facilitate that meeting or not with the board and some community input, another matter, but I don't know if that is concise or is clear, but I think the comp plan implementation committee should be considered, talked about. I think you form that before the fellow comes, so they have a group to work with when they get here.
Okay.
The strategic plan, they would then pick up from there. The software that we're going to work with will be purchased and ready for them to start learning when they're here.
So talk a little bit more about the strategic plan. Is it, are you envisioning like a full day retreat or just a couple hours? It's facilitated by somebody.
It's going to facilitated by somebody, for sure. And there's, staff components, board component, it's your plan, but I think informed by and kind of understanding where the limitations of staff capacity is, you kind of have to have them there. In some pieces of it. I talked to one company that has been around and works on a more national basis, but I've talked with him and he's given me a proposal. I want to get a couple others, input from a couple others out there and some colleagues and who they've worked with. There's a group out of Brunswick, I think, that does some of this that is a little more local. And but I don't know, it's going to be up to the board. I mean, are you open to a strategic planning workshop? And would you prefer it to be one day or two smaller stints?
Well, some people would argue that the comprehensive plan, which, a group of us worked on for 3 years, was a strategic plan.
Right. I feel it falls short in identifying and realizing the day-to-day operations of the town government, though. And so I think you've got to kind of marry what we have for staff capacity, what we do day to day with these bigger 10-year.
No, then that's fine.
Right.
But I wouldn't start from scratch.
No.
So I guess is what I'm saying. And if it's like using the comp plan as the basis of the strategic planning workshop, that kind of makes sense to me.
Right.
So
that's what I was hoping we could do. But we do need to kind of, through that effort, pull in and realize, and I've had the staff start to think about how their time is spent during the day. I mean, and bucketed. I mean, I don't mean like write down every 5-minute phone call you had, but think about for someone who has multiple hats. I mean, Michael could break his down into site plan review or ordinance updates or just general engagement administration with the public. And so each one's a little bit different, but they're starting to think about how they spend their time. And my hope is it'll start to identify like, okay, how much time can we spend on projects? Individual spend. So maybe something in the comp plan, like, hey, we got to do this and this. And like, I don't know that, hey, we got some capacity in house to do these items, but we're not going to be able to bite that one off in house and we have to contract that out or bring some other resource in.
It would seem to me be kind of an in-between where we like the work plan that we go over every year is just kind of an overview, but it doesn't, and then you've got the comp plans way up here. It's almost like bringing those together. Because our work plan just kind of, like you said, this stuff that's been floating on there for years and we move it around in priority levels and then it just kind of disappears for the year. But actually getting those things to work and what priority levels and the time it takes. I mean, it kind of makes sense to have something that that in between, so.
I mean, as many of you know, some of those items are needing to be pre-funded, presumably or seated for a few years before we have the ability to say go.
Oh, well,
Right, and so
yeah, no,
thinking
but-
about how that
but
all.
But the comp plan is intended to be over 10 years, or, I mean, there's even a larger
Yeah.
vision than 1 or 2 years.
Mhm.
You know, a budget tends to be the sort of the 1-year realization of whatever strategic plan is, and broken down into sort of that 1-year piece with the idea that it's going to be funded over multiple years.
Right.
Many initiatives, so.
And I think that's where when you go to town meeting or you're following up on your annual reports, you can kind of show like, we're not looking at it 1 year at a time. There's a comp plan and that's the vision. You need to make that link in the commitment to the board then to say, we're putting staff resources here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the plan's just a great visioning document.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
that
which is what it
strategic
has been in
plan
the
brings
past,
that into
yeah.
focus. The board is saying like, this is what we're working on.
Yeah.
You know, Andy, figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's through the committees, the staff, the partners that are out there that we'll have to work with.
No, that's right.
I think there's gonna be a lot of great things that coming from it, and I'm kind of hopeful that we can kind of pivot some of our budget from reacting to kind of the raw reaction to like, what's it costing us, and realizing that, well, here's what we're providing. Here's what we're looking to achieve with these dollars, and I don't think we do enough connecting that. I don't do
Mhm.
enough helping connect that for the public. It's up X% or X number of dollars. But we need to work on being able to show like, but we're doing this, this, and this, because the feedback loop shows the community wanted this. Here's how we're gonna do that.
Mhm.
And there is that back end. So I think with the fellow, I mean, some of that is there's a transparency tool within that software we're buying that the public can see, however we choose to measure progress. And how we're doing, you know, that's a piece that you can kind of forget about. You can do things, but I think the public needs to see how we're doing.
Mhm.
You know, do you measure it and yes, we did it, or no, we didn't, or do you kind of show like, you know, the roads are a good example, that RSMS system. You know, you can go out there and get a score 1 to 10 of how your roads are. And you can say, they're a 6, we want to get to an 8. Well, to do that, here's how much money we got to put there. And then you can go back the next year and measure it again. And you can say, hey, we got to a 7. Or we're at 9 now.
Mhm.
So kind of figuring out how do we get that process in place that kind of reports out to the public and shows them how we're doing.
When does the fellow come on board?
September.
So you got time to get the committee together.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's, I think exactly this kind of conversation, figuring out like, well, what purpose does the strategic plan serve? And I think that creating a strategic plan right after we've created the comp plan might seem a little bit redundant, but you could imagine in 3 years, once we've kind of gone through one phase, creating a strategic plan in the middle of your comp plan lifespan makes a lot of sense, because now you're the context, the realities have shifted a little bit, and now are what does make sense, what funding sources are out
Yeah.
there now.
Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be easy the first go around, because we have this plan that hopefully will already has us going in the right direction.
Well, and here's the kicker, right? I mean, you started to allude to the budget aspect. I mean, that's where rubber meets the road, is whether we're going to be able to do it or not. And this budget that the voters are considering in June is year 1 of a 10 to 12 year kind of comp plan.
Right.
You know, and we know through the budget process that if we were to go back and look at all of the year 1 marks that were identified to hit, we're not going to financially have the resources to do all of those. And so that's where, in my mind, it comes back to the board. You know, that strategic plan for me guides your budget process and really sets the tone for the priorities.
Right.
Some is comp plan driven, some is going to be outside entities, whether it's grant funds or whatever else we're doing, or just changes at the state level or the federal. I mean, we have to be nimble enough to respond and fit. And so to me, there's a lot more, and it becomes more of an operational document, where the comp plan is more of kind of this visionary piece that we keep pulling from and saying like, remember, we have this and we want to do this. But that strategic plan in my mind kind of operationalizes it and sets the charge.
Yeah, brings it a little bit closer to the ground, because then I think the budget and the actual day-to-day is the rubber actually meeting the road.
Right.
So who actually writes the strategic plan?
In my mind, we'd hire a firm or a person that's capable to come in and work with, you know, again, there'd be primarily the board, but you'd want staff, you know, involved in parts of that. Just to get the, you know, the full scope of what's capable, what they're capable of, or what we can do. And that firm or individual in my mind would be the one that would write it for us.
Okay, is that what towns normally do? They hire someone to write the strategic?
Some don't do it
plan?
at all. Some do it that way. Some do it in-house. It's
Okay.
kind of all over the place.
But it's done by every town.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
It's all too common that you get a comprehensive plan and then it just sits on a shelf and people look at
Well,
it
that's
for
what we
maybe the
did last
pictures and the
time.
maps,
That's what we
but.
did 10 years ago.
Some
Nobody
towns
did
don't
it.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Towns don't even do the comp plans.
yeah, so, right,
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 yeah.
right.
They're not required anymore. So, I mean, they're great to have and I'm grateful that we've done it. And so it's like, let's make sure it doesn't
Yeah.
end up
We
with the
don't want
feeling,
it to sit there.
Let's use it.
the feeling from the last one. I get the, kind of the understanding that a lot of people felt like, well, we did that, but it hasn't been followed. Heart and soul, a lot of great people still talk about the heart and soul process and how engaging that was. And they feel there's a lot of things that haven't happened, and I think that's to me, like there's a missing piece. And you come to the budget, and you're talking about a $5 million project or $1 million project or something that needs to be done with staff and we don't have the staff to do it because we didn't raise the money to do it. It's like, so it's really kind of in my mind pulling, and again, looking at the budget from more of like, what are we accomplishing rather
Right.
than how much are we raising?
Well, if you start with the broad comprehensive 10-year plan and you look at a subset of that, which ultimately becomes the strategic plan, looking at
Mhm.
what priorities within the comprehensive plan can we incorporate in all the other needs that the city has, getting that done, you've now got a practical approach to it. So on a process standpoint, I would say that, half-day sessions would be generally better, but if you bring in a consultant, that might not be practical, only because after you have one session, it's good to reflect on it overnight or whatever, as opposed to trying to be creative for a whole, 8 or 10 hours.
An exhausting, long day, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also
Sense.
think that the strategic plan is not gonna be as. I think it should be more technical and to the point. So there's not gonna be hopefully lots of like kind of descriptions of why we're doing, that's in the comp plan. The
Exactly.
vision stuff. This is like, we wanna get this done. Here's, what our expectations are in terms of funding or, what resources we might be able to pull in. So hopefully it's not gonna be, a really, it might be more dense, but it hopefully will not be a really long document that hopefully be more technical so we can refer to and be like, oh yeah, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now,
Yeah,
year
yeah.
two.
Yeah, it's clear how we're measuring it. We set some expectations for like in the first quarter of the year, this is what will happen and, kind of be able to take that, with the comp plan, you were great to kind of like, okay, let's keep it at that level of like, call it policy.
Yeah, it's like goals and
you know,
policies and.
We'll just use the one of like, create a town park. Great, let's let the board and direct the staff to figure out what's the best strategy, to go and create a town park. Again, you need staff resources, you need some money.
Yeah, you need to identify who does what.
So instead of the comp plan getting so far down in there, knowing that you're trying to plan for things up to 10, 12 years out. In my mind, you let that next layer happen, that strategic plan, you do get down into the more dense details and into the weeds and set your work plan for the year or potentially 3. It's nice.
Right.
And then that gets brought down into the budget, because if you don't have the budget to do it, or you don't correspond the budget to the strategic plan, it doesn't get done either.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that the strategic plan hopefully is starting, maybe going beyond starting to explore the practical of how are we going to actually do this. This is a great goal. This is a good policy, and I'm sure some of the strategies will be spot on, but some of them it will be, oh, now that we've dug a little bit, we've gone beneath the surface, we need to pivot and there is money for this, there's not money for that, so we'll go in this direction rather than.
So the strategic plan is basically telling us how we're going to implement the comp plan
In part.
in part.
Again, I'll say that the comp plan falls short in identifying and realizing daily operational needs. Right?
Okay.
It's
Oh,
focusing
okay,
on
okay.
community desires, needs and things, but it's not focusing on, the pressures coming from another direction. Say like, well, we have to be able to issue new plates. Where
Right,
does that
right.
fit in terms of staff time and not assuming the staff alone are the only ones and, going to be tasked with implementing things, but like, how do we make sure who's overseeing who to do what by when?
Right, okay.
And so I think it's in my mind, you're pulling in the comp plan. It's a big piece of it, but really bringing in other aspects of that aren't included in there. Some of our departments aren't really mentioned in there hardly at all, but they're here.
Right.
Right. And so they're doing good work, but it's like, how do we fit, making sure that we're acknowledging that they're a resource to help carry out parts of the comp plan, but also
Right.
the town has other things to do. So when it comes to the budget season, you're understanding.
Well, that's why I don't feel like we can, I mean, we would be very happy if the town people, our employees could help a little, but there's no way that they can do their job and still take on.
Well, there's a
much
lot of
more.
boxes that say town staff. So that's the part that for me was like, we need to understand what is our capacity, if you're looking at your time in these buckets, kind of what is
Okay.
available. Say it's downtime. We're never just sitting here with downtime per se, but it's like there's projects. That's like, Leslie's an example where it's like, what do we have? I had you help with like personal property. I forget what it was the other day with the assessors. And it's like it's taking what the assessors are going to do, but taking it a step further.
Yeah.
And so there's little things that we're able to kind of plug in when we know we've got these gaps and needs.
Well, when you whittle it down, it comes down to where it comes into the budget, like, the staff time is, you can, if you're looking at how many hours, how much does it cost to do this, and where that fits in, do you have extra staff? So.
If I can see
Pull
that
that
a little
budget
bit
into it.
further ahead, then we can potentially see that like, hey, the budget coming up next year, we're going to make sure we consider proposing a part-time position, or,
Yeah.
if we don't get a grant, how are we going to make sure this still gets done? Does it get bumped a year? Do we raise the money? Depending on when your your grant is denied or approved, you'll know for the budget, but you might be in the budget. You might have counted on it and it didn't happen. So, right? So now you're delaying or shifting other priorities. And I think that in my mind, that plan kind of allows the board to come back and say, yeah, we knew we were going to do these 20 things this year, but because this didn't happen or because this popped up, like the board can then say like, we're not going to, let's bump this one up, or let's not do this one right now and put this off another year. And so it just is an opportunity, I think, to kind of just see it a little bit.
Yeah.
More bird's eye view, as well as understanding what's in the weeds.
Yeah, 'cause I'm just thinking, I think grants are kind of a good example of how that fits in, because if we set a priority in the comp plan, now we're getting to the point where we're saying, okay, well, there's obviously going to be a budget consideration if we're going to be building something. So the strategic plan is going to say, oh, we can maybe identify a specific grant that like, we're going to go after this grant, and assuming that this all works out, we're going to budget this much, we're going to get a grant for that much, and we're going to partner with so-and-so to actually implement it. And then, in 3 years, if it turns out we didn't get that grant, or maybe we're, with the sidewalk grant with the congressional spending, it's like,
Right.
we're like, all right, well, we're continuing to go after it, but it's dragging. So it allows you to kind of have like, we actually have actionable items, but can also change. But it is a real, we've actually thought out through the end
You
of
have
it.
an implementation plan as opposed to a vision. That's the
Right.
difference.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so. This is, assuming that, like I said, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we start and say, go find people to be on the committee, but I think it sounds like, if you're all like kind of comfortable with it, that we should start exploring, figuring out who might want to be on the committee, how we might go about, fleshing out some more of the details for the strategic plan.
I would start with who would you like to see? What kind of skills would you like to see on the committee, and then try to find the people as opposed to the other way around?
Well, I know one of the ones we had talked about was like, there are entities named in the comp plan. Do you want the implementation committee to be a group of folks that are working collectively with us to implement? That might be the partners in it. Do you want to go out, and kind of fill it, or do you want to fill it with folks that are more of an expert in certain areas of the comp plan? Do you want to?
Well, hopefully they're one and the same.
Well, they might be.
Yeah, all I'm saying is there are probably a lot of people in the town that want to volunteer, but if you can try to focus on the people that can bring most value in terms of their background, skills, whatever. That's what I'm saying.
But also I would suspect that once the strategic plan is set and we know what we're trying to do, there are going to be different people that you will call on for each part of it.
Yeah.
Like there won't be the same people that will implement all the things that need to be done.
Right. And that's, because we happened to be at the hospital today, I was speaking with Cindy.
Cindy Wade.
Yeah. I apologize for that name not sticking, but I was speaking with her and saying like, they're such a big institution, big part of the community, that they're going to be, I was seeing if the hospital had some interest in being involved. But it's like, whether they're impacted directly or indirectly, like they're going to be, to some extent, they're going to want to be in a lot of the conversations, but they're absolutely going to be things that like isn't really directly relevant to the hospital or to the the YMCA or whoever else is in here. So it's a little bit of a weird thing. That's why I wanted to come and start and kind of throw out a very half-baked idea right now, because I think over the next 10 years, it's going to be kind of a morphing group, but it would be good to get beyond the select board and the town staff, like somewhat of a center of gravity that can remain somewhat consistent over the next 10 years.
I can definitely see it being, an extension of, or an expansion of the work plan, really. I mean, the work plan, I think where the comp plan, in the last comp plan, it wasn't really implemented. We didn't use it really as a guide. And now you're looking at something a little bit more robust. And when we visit the work plan, there's a lot of a lot of it hasn't changed on that work plan. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, as we mentioned, that's been sitting on there a while. So it definitely seems like it's be an extension of that and actually making it, how do we implement it? How does it happen? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that having if it exists wholly separate from the select board, it's not going to be successful. And that's why I feel like this is, to make sure that you are, and I'm not trying to add more to your plates, but that you are all involved and as early on in kind of creating some kind of a system that makes sense to you all, since you're there doing this.
We could do, I mean, we could, like you say, it's gonna, at your point, it's gonna change a little bit. I mean, the initial inception, we could look into it as the board, as a workshop, and then build it out from there. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't, especially if you have somebody come in that as a consulting or something, and can give us some guidance, say, this is the type of people you should have. As Tom points out, there's certain people that you want to get in certain places, but we could definitely start out with that way and get some guidance to it, and then, or have some guidance brought to us and say, okay, this is how we build it out.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Yeah. I see it being very similar to when we do our work plan visit, we look at it and go, oh, yeah, priorities here and there. And then we always kind of look it over and go, well, who's actually going to do it?
Well, we're usually into the summer, so you're usually a month or two into your new fiscal year. So
Right,
you've already burned 2 months of 12.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm kind of hoping that the process as it evolves, is something that kind of is agreed upon in the fall and sets the tone for the following budget planning cycle. So we're working from ahead and we know where we're going, rather than, okay, we approved the budget, now let's talk about the work plan. It's like, well,
Right. So
in my mind, that informs the budget process, so we can, and we've kind of slowly been
Oh, we
trying to
can't
get
do
there,
that. We
but-
don't have the budget for it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're always behind. So
So how do
Fair
we
enough.
go about hiring someone
You mean to develop a
for
strategic plan?
to develop the strategic?
Oh, yeah, I'm
plan?
gonna reach out to a couple more, again, either people or entities that do this kind of work.
yeah,
I've got one number so far. I'm not gonna share it just because I'm gonna try and get some others.
That's, it's,
But
it's up to you to do it though, right?
I'll bring it back to the board to kind of see it, in the
Get some
process
grant-
helpful
get some grant funding to.
potentially. I did apply. I haven't heard back. I did meet with someone from Maine Community Foundation after I applied for that
yeah.
community capacity building grant. But I'm hopeful that they'll reach out soon. I think it was end of May that they were talking about, so we're getting there, I guess. But that would help support some of the cost of the fellow in their first year and some of the cost of that implementation software in its first year. It's really kind of a seed, kind of help you get started on this new kind of thing. So if that happens, we'd have a little bit of flexibility with the budget next year with what we've put forward. The fellows position is already budgeted for, and that's the capacity to
Right.
kind of move forward. It's a 30 to 32 hour a week, I believe they said,
Yeah.
job, year round. And the expectation would be for 2 years. So that's a lot of resources
Yeah.
dedicated to the
It
comp
is,
plan.
Yeah.
Support and moving that forward, and that'll evolve. And year one's heavy on first half of the year is really heavy on getting the comp plan and implementation strategy put together. Get the software uploaded, work on the board strategic plan. But then the 80% of the fellows thing is supposed to be kind of geared towards either climate change or
Resiliency.
marine
Marine
economy.
economy.
So we said the comp plan's rooted in resiliency.
It
So
is. Yeah.
we couldn't tell them at the time exactly which strategies or priorities we're going to be focused on. I said, but you get through the tail end of that implementation piece and kind of a plan as to how we're moving forward. Then the fellow could, based on their background, kind of zero in on a couple top priorities and go. And so that, we have found out just yesterday,
Yeah. Yeah.
that the candidate we preferred and asked if they'd consider taking the job has accepted.
Cool.
That's
So
great.
we're on the hunt for housing.
Okay.
I mentioned before, we'll be looking, so we're looking for housing. We're still waiting for some clarity on kind of the parameters around what's needed. But at this moment, if anything comes up for September, that's year round, keep an ear out.
Okay.
Will do, will do.
What are we looking at for housing? Like,
At this moment, I don't know. I mean, I think you would raise some questions. I raised some questions. I mean, I don't know if if they have a pet.
No.
We think 1 bedroom. would
Lisa
be
got back.
adequate.
She
Yeah.
basically said, go with the assumption it's going to be a 1 bedroom. They probably they're going to have a car. So being closer to this building is better, but doesn't have to be walking distance. Yeah, no pet. And
So does the town provide the housing for them, or do
Oh,
they?
well, we pay the $14,500 and the Island Institute's program kind of covers the rest of the costs.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
The Mill Street will be done probably by September.
that's right. Yeah.
Oh.
We'll have to see how the
I bet its list is
qualification for
long
that
already.
works because
Mhm.
well, I mean, if they're in school now, probably have very low income then, if any. So but they would qualify.
Is it gonna be low income?
It's
It's
affordable.
workforce.
Yeah, it's
Affordable
so there's
workforce.
I had heard it was like $1,400 a month or something like that.
I think
Which it sounds awful.
that's about
but in
right.
Theory, that's affordable today.
Right.
In the
Yeah.
market.
Is this a
'Cause it's-
single person?
That would be for yes, one. Well, the fellow is going, I believe, as a partner.
Okay.
That's all I know. So possibly we also need to find the partner or a job doing something else. I don't know. We don't know if that's the case, but
Yeah.
yeah, so but we need housing. The Mill Street, I can tell you it's the people who make up to 80% of the area median income. I think the area median income was like around 53,000. It's changed every year.
Yeah, it
So
does,
around
yeah.
50, which means when you do the math, it works out to like just about $1,400 is the maximum rent if you find someone who makes exactly 80% of the area median income, a single person household. So the math is whether that is considered affordable to somebody is a whole different
That's right,
story.
yeah, that's-
It's
yeah.
technically affordable.
Maths out, but it's.
Yeah, so and again, those are rough numbers, and I have not
Yeah.
gotten those from the
Okay.
developer or property manager or anything. So
So Andy, yeah, if you've got a few other places you're gonna follow up on, just keep us in the loop there, and we can, once we kind of hammer that out, we can do a workshop or something, and then get some feedback from a consultant, and then move forward. That sounds.
On the implementation committee, would you want us to bring forward, do you have a clear vision of the kind of the guardrails or like the charge of the committee? Is you going to create it? Or would you want to kind of see some examples of kind of how it's?
Yeah, because I could see that all over the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
There's no.
and the
no-
fact that we do have a resource is helpful as well. So
say
we
don't need
can
to
work
reinvent
on
the
pulling
wheel,
together
there's
some other
examples
towns.
out there.
yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I think that's I guess maybe if I can request something from you all is figure out what you want the implementation committee to kind of provide to you. What you on an ongoing basis every year, like what do they bring back to the select board to help you to do all of the things that the select board has to do?
Yeah.
What are they charged with essentially?
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Something to
And
think
we'll
about. Yeah.
think about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess we'll start digging into figuring out what that could look like
Yeah.
and trying to bring you some options and
Mhm.
start getting the ball rolling on
So
Yeah.
we should be
Keep the
thinking
ball
about
rolling, right?
what we want the implementation committee to do.
to do. Yeah, how they might help you, because I imagine
Is it an annual report to you? Is it a quarterly update on progress? Is it, more hands-on in some aspects? And to what leeway kind of do you provide them with the ability to negotiate partnerships? Or, I think that's the part that kind of I start to wonder a little bit. You kind of task them a little bit with more of the you're gonna do, and just being clear on like someone's got to oversee that.
Well, right.
Mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely, and someone with authority.
Right. And so I think it's just, that's where it's like kind of being clear. So everyone who wants to sign up and be involved, or for the board to know, like, the expectations, we'll hear from you again, either quarterly or whatever the period is. I think the expectation is that there's an update at the annual town meeting. Every
For
year.
There was some,
yeah, I would think that.
I mean, there was a thought about that. at one
Right.
point.
You know, so that would be like, okay, well, that group will be the ones giving that presentation at town meeting every year.
Mhm.
So I think that's where my mind kind of goes on some of
Yeah.
that.
Well, and if there's anybody that wants to be of you five, if there should be a select board member that's on the implementation committee, you know, do you want to just how to keep that connection
Mhm.
active so that you know it doesn't kind of
Yeah.
fizzle.
Yeah.
But okay, so
Michael,
we'll
thank you.
work on figuring that out, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, put that on your work plan, you know, make sure you
That's-
fit that in
yeah.
sometime.
The comp plan is always.
Remember, you
always
added
back
this
there.
in to your workload. We-
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I'd love to see his to-do list someday.
This doesn't end, right? Doesn't end. No.
Andy, I'll just
yeah.
highlight just a couple of things. The fire, I got an RFP from Chief Roberts yesterday, after the department met. And they're getting pretty well close to advertising an RFP for the ladder truck. This would be in anticipation of a positive or the passing of that bond measure at town meeting. And I think what we've talked about is next meeting on the 21st. Yeah, 21st. Having it at the fire station.
Okay.
Like the opportunity to
Oh.
allow the public
Sure.
board to either take a look at the current one, talk a little bit specifically about the RFP and the process. And I thought maybe, look, can we just take it over there instead of another additional meeting? Maybe it makes that one a little bit longer, but for those that haven't been in the fire station, give you an opportunity. Cheryl said we used to actually meet there. The board used to
Yep.
meet there.
Really?
But we have the technology as of now to make that meeting happen over there.
Yeah.
We do have the meeting owls. We've
Yeah.
tested them
We
out
can
with the
make-
staff already.
Oh, we got them?
Mobile,
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
So we could make that meeting happen with technology and still broadcast that.
Good.
But yeah, it was kind of an opportunity potentially to get to the fire station, do a walkthrough
yeah.
and talk about the ladder truck more intimately with him and to actually see. And I think, Josh can attest to, once you're there, actually looking at talking about, hey, we need storage. It's like, okay, well, what's on there now? And you can list the things, but it's like, look at it, take a look at what's on there and what they're working with. And Daryl was sitting on helping them with the RFP piece and kind of working through that.
Yeah, they've got I think this coming Monday, I missed they have a truck committee, and I'm been invited. I go, it's more of a learning process for me because there's a lot of stuff that I don't deal with it, but it's,
We
yeah.
sat the last time we made up a generic spec and
Yeah.
Mhm.
John Roberts was working on making it. And I think he finished it last night. We just need to run over it on.
so this coming Monday, right?
Monday,
We
and I'll
have to go
look at it
over
this
specs,
weekend.
The requested specs anyway.
It's a generic,
Should make that one.
so
It's-
all
It's solid, it's
manufacturers.
long.
Long,
It's
all
solid.
all manufacturers will
Yep.
have an opportunity because you can put wording in certain places and they go, we're not gonna bid on that because that's such an, they want this type of truck.
Mhm.
Well, you have to take that type of language out so you get more competitive bid.
Yeah.
So-
Of the 3 or 4 that's up there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But there's a scoring
great.
metric in there. I'll be sharing that before the next meeting, so we have a chance to review it. I think you just sent it last night at like 10:30.
Yeah.
So I did breeze it this
Got through
morning.
late, yeah.
Parking lot, I think is the last thing I'll just mention unless there's other things you want to ask about, but the parking lot was closed again today. I had 2 updates yesterday because within a half an hour it changed.
Minute by minute.
And so today they were working on laying out the striping plan, the pattern. Tomorrow the stripers will be in here doing that. At the same time, the catch basins are being cleaned. At the same time, the contractors coming to pave the rest of the street.
So I did have a question. Well, actually, someone brought it up to me. You know those, what are the things called for the parking, those blocks?
Well, it's
What are?
Guardrail, bollards.
No, they're in front of the cars.
Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah.
stops.
The
curb
stop.
stops,
We
yeah.
didn't have those before.
We had them in the fall.
We did.
Yeah, we bought a pallet of them in the fall, anticipating the need to kind of mark out parking stalls. And
Okay.
we used them a lot in the fall when it was all gravel.
Okay, but this is not a permanent thing because we
No.
take them up in the winter so we can plow,
It was
right?
just for this
They're temporary,
project.
Yeah.
Oh, they were just for the project.
Yeah, without lines painted, it's, as you can imagine, you've
Chaos.
seen, it's.
Oh, so once the lines are
They're not there
gone,
now.
they're not there. Oh,
Yeah.
they're gone, right?
Yeah.
We'll have some in Taco Valley, probably just to differentiate our property with the neighbors.
Okay.
Just to kind of, but those will be painted over there too, but we'll have
Okay.
we had concrete ones before. These are easy to move. We can spike them if we want to spike them, but, you know, we'll have a couple kicking around, but no, they'll be painted lines
It'll just
after
be
tomorrow.
painted lines,
As long
right?
as the weather holds, we'll be good.
Right,
They
right.
make a really good speed bump,
Yeah,
as I watched yesterday.
front of my house.
you can go over it, you can drag it.
Yeah. But they have come in handy on several occasions. We can use them different for temporary, temporary guidance. So,
Yeah, okay.
Those are the
Okay,
only two that was
cool.
my
Anything
highlight. I
jump
don't know if
out?
anyone had any questions?
Anybody on, a lot going on, but I think Andy's done
There's a
really well.
lot going
Keeping up with
on.
and keeping us on.
I can't believe how long Keen Woods is
I've
taking.
saved that at the end, but I think he's done a fantastic job.
I agree.
Like communicating, but managing the whole project.
Yeah.
Well,
then-
and plus you're running a person short.
Well, I don't do a whole lot with John. John is pretty independent and capable. John's done a great job.
I know, but normally that job has an assistant
Right.
or he
Yeah,
he has a
it's a-
coworker or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
No, he's done almost everything entirely by himself. I mean, every once in a while, I think just the other day, I was out walking the other day and he was bringing down the benches. It's like, oh, you know, let me know you're doing that. I'll help you do that. I can do that at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I helped move a couple of them, but otherwise, I mean, he's pretty independent, is able to do it. And we did have one application come in yesterday, so we'll track that down and see. Another one had picked one up and I haven't seen that come back. So,
Okay.
you know, maybe there's some movement, maybe it'll work.
Little bit, yeah.
But yeah, desperately want to get someone in there to work with him. Certain tasks just can't do alone. So
Right.
Uh,
And you really do not have the time to do it.
not without putting other things on.
running out of room to wear hats here. Oh, right.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, let's move on here. Official action items. So we have an MDOT, with the Cash Concrete, project.
I feel we're at the point where this needs to be something the board officially approves. And so this is finally coming to us. This was part of a grant that went in, I think, in 2023. It was awarded last spring, I believe. And here we are almost 12 months later, finally the contract.
Sign it.
So one thing to highlight that I think is really important, you know,
197.
yeah, so when you get to section 3, page 2 of 11 within that contract, the financial obligations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was an 80-20 split.
Right.
The way it's written, it's guaranteeing the state will cover 80% up to a dollar amount. And that number is based on an estimate from 2023. So we still feel relatively confident it can be done generally within this. It'll all depend on how the bids come back. It's a precast structure that we're planning for. It's relatively straightforward.
Right.
It's a road that we can shut down during the construction and still get people out on the other end.
Yeah.
And so there's pieces of it that'll help bring that cost down. The engineering, they come pre-engineered, those box culverts, there's some additional work that'll have to happen. One of the big unknowns, and there's only 4 properties, so it might not be that bad, but some right-of-way work that'll have to happen, easements at the very least, temporary, potentially permanent. So we have to work through that. We have to follow the local project administration process, the LPA manual. I have that certification through June. I told them that they saw that, so that's fine. My plan would be to hire a firm who's also LPA certified so that they're aware and have them really run through it. But, you know, I'm on there as the LPA. My hope was that the DOT would administer this project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because it's on a local road, it's not going to become a bridge, it's still a minor span. It's going to have to be through us. Which again, is fine. But those are the 2 big ones. And so I had asked in the meeting initially, I said, well, what if the costs come back at $1.2 million?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and so
Yes.
They're capped to 784.
right. And so he said, well, you know, generally speaking, they're able to kind of, depending on where they are in their project cycles, they're generally able to get the money. But it is putting us on notice that like there's potential that if it goes beyond that estimated cost, we're gonna have to
We're on the hook.
pay more. It's still a great value for us to have that much covered.
No kidding.
Yeah,
It's huge.
Just a-
800,000.
It's just something to acknowledge and before this.
Yeah.
This is state money. It's not from the federal.
It is
to
from the
state.
federal
It is
delivered to the
federal.
state. It was
Sign the thing.
Federal Highway, Federal Highway Administration.
But
funded
it
that
is
program.
federal money
It is federal money.
that the state
Yeah.
is responsible for divvying out. Okay.
So just want to highlight that. The rest of it, I think, is as long as it is relatively straightforward for
Yeah.
projects we have. That LPA manual is probably 300 pages long. There's plenty of detail in that too. But
Yeah. Okay, okay.
so if you were feeling confident or comfortable
Yeah.
at this point and you wanted to authorize me to sign that on the town's behalf, I could get that out to him.
I'll make a motion to authorize, Andy Dorff, town manager, to sign and implement the State of Maine Department of Transportation agreement for a federal aid locally administered project with the town of Damariscotta regarding culvert replacement at Chestnut Creek Brook. There.
I'll
How's
second.
that sound? Josh, you get that seconded? All right. First and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor? All right, yeah, grab that money out. Really? Yeah. And then, yeah, lastly, we have Arbor Day proclamation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very exciting.
Yeah, Coastal Rivers had gotten that grant. We were supportive and wrote a letter of support for them applying last year
Yep.
for this. Their plan on May 17th is to, do a demonstration and provide a certain amount of trees to the public that are there. As part of a bigger plan they have on campus and just generally for the community. They're asking, they had asked initially as part of our letter of support and them applying if the town would be willing to speak at the event if they had one. I said, yeah, okay, well, here we are. And the request was to have the board consider proclamation acknowledging Arbor Day being May 17th. In Maine, it's a little bit later just because of the temperatures typically aren't as favorable in April when it generally has fallen when it was initiated in Nebraska. So Maine has created the third full week in May is Arbor Week. The event day I was suggesting would be the day the board acknowledge, or you can acknowledge for the week, but so I'm just providing you a draft of what the proclamation could look like. So
Okay.
question one is, are you willing to proclaim a day as Arbor Day? And if so, are you comfortable with
Could
that?
we be as vague as like the third Saturday in the month or something?
You could do that because it always falls in the third week of May, so you wouldn't
Right.
worry about shifting
mean-
date. You could just pick a.
Then you don't have to do it like in the middle of the week when everyone's working or.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I'm
all
fine.
it's
Yeah,
really
because of
calling
the
folks to
date.
do is to plant trees and gladden the heart and promote well-being of this and the future generations.
Right.
So,
What is it,
I'm
phone?
all in support of this, but what would it take to even go to, because remember all that feedback we got around trees and being torn down, and then
Yeah.
even the comp plan talks about the
Yeah.
importance of trees in terms of livability of the city and in terms of
So in,
having, what would it take to become a tree city USA?
so
Yeah.
anticipating that,
Okay.
the next
I
step
like
would be
this,
to
yeah.
become a tree city. In those last 2 pages of the packet, kind of highlight what it would take. And there's a summary of the programs, a brief history on it, the standards that need to be met,
Right.
and then the application checklist. So you're able to kind of go through there. You'd be able to check one of them off by having the
Sure.
proclamation.
Right.
But there's one of the standards is like, how much do we put towards this effort, right? And the recommendation, I think, is like $2 per resident, or per, by census, your population.
So that's $4,000 or $5,000.
Right. What do you do with that money? And then it kind of lays it out. There's the call for a tree care ordinance, a tree board or department. And so I think there's some bigger things in there that need to be considered before it's just like, let's just do it,
But isn't this the sort of thing where a group of citizens could take the initiative on this one?
potentially, but you
Yeah.
got to create an ordinance. You got to have a board, so it could be a citizen board. But I think so that's why I
Well, the
provided
ordinance
this.
for sure.
We
we're gonna
have, don't we
right.
have an ordinance? We don't have a tree ordinance?
But that's the sort of
Then we
thing that
should
a
have a
committee
tree
could work on, is coming up with an
Maybe
ordinance.
need one.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So the town has to feel like they're in a position and ready to take on an ordinance, and you're not gonna have the volunteers enforce and manage that presumably. It's not something you put on the volunteers usually. There's some administrative pieces that you want to make sure you get right. So we got to just kind of think through again, like staff capacity and how does that actually carry it out?
So
One thing to
really-
draft an ordinance, but to actually carry it out.
Can this be done any time of the year?
Yes.
So really, this does have to be done by someone in the town?
I'm recommending the enforcement aspects of an ordinance be done in town as.
Okay.
employees.
Yeah,
It's an
but-
ordinance.
But all
Okay.
the other stuff
Yeah.
about education and, tree care and all this sort of stuff, that's something that a
Sure.
tree committee could.
Right, I'm just stating like you can't become part of the Tree City USA without also creating the ordinance, the board, and all those other pieces. And
Yeah.
so how do
Okay.
you get to the point where you've drafted it for the public to review? You know,
Yeah.
it certainly could be.
Yeah.
You have your attorney review it presumably, and, you know, staff kind of understand like what's the enforcement piece and implementation, you know, how does this actually not just become an ordinance that we forget about?
Yeah. Do you
Like
want to,
cover other
do
ones.
you want to volunteer to investigate it?
I think it's up to the, I mean, I provided.
I'll volunteer. to
Right,
do
so
it.
I provided you the steps and the standards and what it would
Yeah.
take. I think it's up to the board to decide whether you want to take that on. You know,
Why don't we
and
for
have the
now-
community move forward. on
Just,
that.
just for this evening, let's get
Yes.
the proclamation
Yeah.
ahead, because it's,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody's in
I haven't.
the trees, so.
examined it enough.
It mentions, you had mentioned the third full week of May, which coincides with the state's Arbor Week, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
makes sense to,
Mhm.
so would we want to have a Arbor Week proclamation then? Do we change it to that, Andy?
If you want to.
I suppose we probably
Yeah.
should, because if we say Arbor Day, it's gonna be in.
Well, I know.
Day, so we could, yeah, I mean, we could do that. It's very simple. You could just have the Arbor Week proclamation, and we could have, you just recognize the third full week in May is Arbor Week,
Yeah.
coincide with the legislature.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, you need to draft it again? You want to make a motion?
I'll rewrite it and just, if the board, you know, I think it's best if you just sign it.
Yeah. So I can make a motion. I mean, make a
Yeah, let's
motion to
approve it, yeah.
declare.
Sure.
Like,
But you're making a
Says-
motion to sign the proclamation. We'll do the official thing on the 17th there. for
Yeah,
the public
yeah.
to.
do hereby proclaim. That's very fancy. So, all right. So what do we need for motion right now then? We need,
So I think for me, it was more to be able to know that the board wants to go forward, and I mean, if you want to deliver, it,
Yeah,
or I can deliver either
make a
way.
motion to proceed with at least with the Arbor Week proclamation, for the third full week in May.
Perfect.
For the town of Damariscotta, coincide with the main legislature. That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
just need a second on that one. And any discussion? Those in favor? All right, and then we can build out further. I mean, there's, get that step and then build that
I'm,
out further.
yes,
on
because
top of
I'm
it.
really interested in doing the Tree City USA.
I don't think it's complicated. I think it's just
Oh,
understanding,
absolutely.
like, are we ready for, and what, to what degree is the ordinance gonna have for preservation care of, and
But
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
some homework. It's-
Right.
Yeah.
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 And we're not the first city to create an ordinance.
Nope.
So.
No,
I
because.
think
it
talking to those that
exists.
have, I think is important. And
Oh, we're a
small,
city,
bigger.
I thought we're a town, but
Worry
I
about-
mean, when you get into this, the Tree City USA thing, you need, a lot of the bigger cities have arborists.
Right. There's a lot to.
There's, through their parks
Mhm.
department, they have arborists and they
Our parks
oversee,
department.
Right.
oversee everything, so.
You in the park
Yeah, so
department?
take some time to look into it.
We
so.
need to
And
see
as,
what
and
it
as far as ordinances for cutting trees and everything, the Maine State Forest Service has a intent to harvest permit that when you're cutting trees that, you know, for commercial entities, you need to fill out, so. Also shoreland issues and all sorts of things, so.
Yeah.
There are things in place already that, do cover some of these
Mhm.
licensing things.
Point.
It might make sense just to kind of focus on the downtown or the neighborhood rather than the rural areas of the town.
Right.
Where
A
there
lot
are
of trees
trees.
there.
But when you start planting trees in, you know, downtown areas, your soil conditions aren't so great, your salt applications aren't so great, so you need to start looking at certain
Types of trees.
types of trees and,
There's a
Yep.
lot more to it, yeah.
Yep.
so.
Yeah, you got time, doesn't happen up overnight, there's a lot to unpack there, yeah, a lot of good points.
Maybe this is a joint venture with Newcastle again, because they have a lot of dying trees in Glidden Street and River Road and Mills Road, so might be something they might be interested in as well. I'll just throw that out there.
Oh, didn't we just pass
any-
standard 4?
We did. We did.
We did, yeah, maybe we skipped ahead, so, yeah. Well, anything else, Andy? Dan, we missed anything? We good? Good, all right, I'll check with the board, Tom, start down with you, any?
Nothing today.
skip right to Dan.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the board should be pretty proud of both Daryl and Andy
Hmm.
today.
Uh-oh.
We went,
Yeah.
I attended the event in the back parking lot and you guys both spoke before cameras and before state officials and
I put a
got
big shirt
interviewed.
on.
And I know, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looks good. And get interviewed by TV people and all sorts, and you guys did really well. So we should be proud of your representation of the town today. So
Well,
so that was
And
good.
I appreciate it, but you know, like you said, it's representing the town, so it's, you know, it's an extension of that. So it was nice to see some recognition and coming in and, you know, it brings a little bit
Oh,
more.
I think it was
more focus, you
Well, I
know?
think it put the
Yeah.
town in a
spotlight.
really good light.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So-
and I think, and it was nice to see they talked to Scott, and talk to him about Schooner Landing, and I
Yeah.
got focused on, there was a lot, I think, a lot more happened than
Yeah,
originally
it was
had
good.
planned in the news stories, so
Yeah.
there was a lot more going on down here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a good.
It came together kind of fast. I think they got a phone call last Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, and we think we want to have it here. Can you host it here? And so we're trying all of a sudden to, if it's rain, we do it here. If it's sunny, we can do it there. And by Monday, everything I thought we were doing kind of flipped, and it was entirely going to be happening at the hospital. But then we were still going to do the tour of the weather. So I apologize for not. I never even got. I was asking Michael because he had seen something forwarded from somebody about. Because I had sent the email out earlier today. I'll find out if we can have board members at the hospital for the press
Yeah.
conference, and there were plenty of folks that were there that weren't part of the commission. And I was like, I never saw the notice for that. But
fine.
you know,
Yeah.
so I apologize for that. But yeah, Dan was able to come down for the tour part of it in the parking lot, and that went well. We brought the wall down.
Yeah.
One of the crates, and pulled about 20 feet out of there. John, I realized that it'd be great to have some training on, only because you're not going to pull 200 feet of that wall back into that box. 20 feet was a struggle.
It's heavy. Yeah.
So learning the tricks, I'm like, okay, here's how you're supposed to do it. And I think really it's intended to kind of have that machine rolling, and you only, I think you kind of go past it and then fold it in, and then go past it and fold it, is my guess. But you know, so we were able to kind of show people what it looks like without it being up with water behind it.
Mhm.
It just lays flat otherwise. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, appreciate that. And it was great to see so many people that did come down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
there's
It was a good
crowd.
turnout.
There's a
Real
good crowd
turnout,
down there,
yeah.
so, yeah, no, that's just.
With that comes another state plan on how to rebuild and be more resilient. So stay tuned.
Okay.
Andrea, I'll throw it down to you. Anything?
No, I
Surprise
just,
you.
I just want to say that I just feel like the parking lot project has gone so well.
Mm.
It just seems like they did a good job, and they were just so, well, you helped by, getting information out to everyone, but they really were very aware of our needs to keep our town moving, and
I think the general consensus of being downtown is with the communication has been very well, with the contractors directly to, the businesses of what downtown. They've been very, very good to,
to work with.
work with them
Yeah.
and respond to needs. So that's been
Yeah.
it's made it, relatively.
Did you get any feedback from any of the business owners? I mean, we had a lot of negative in the beginning. Did you get
So
any
much
positive?
negative.
Mostly positive now. Yeah. I mean, everybody wants it done, and it's,
Yeah.
at this point, but the bulk of it's done. And I think the huge part of that was with the communication from, starting here at the town office with Andy, and then trickling down through with the engineers and even down to
Cody
the
and
contractors.
Thomas,
Yeah, they've had some really good people down there in all respects that have been responsive, and so that's been huge. It's really done well for easing folks'
It
concerns.
may
with
help
everything,
us
so.
if we have something similar in the future where
Yeah.
there's a lot of concern going in.
Yeah.
You can say, well, there was that kind of concern when we had the parking lot, but it worked out all right.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were
that's a
very,
good,
very
it's a good
lucky.
example of it.
I
So,
mean,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's important to acknowledge on certain projects like this one, just given where it was and the extent of it, having that RPR on site.
Yeah,
Thomas has been a godsend from my perspective to be able to interface with people like as it's happening.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, you know, I'm up here,
Something of that
I'll go check
scale.
in at the end of the day, and from the morning to the end of the day, it's completely different. And
Mhm.
you know, folks are pulling on the contractors themselves, whether it's the foreman. Cody's done a great job as the foreman in the spring here, and as he can, he'll talk to folks too, but he'll keep Thomas and I in the loop. And so, you know, it's a huge cost to have an RPR. The sanitary district's got it for their projects. It's expensive, but otherwise, there's no way
It was worth
You
it.
couldn't.
you're down
you
there
couldn't
with
work
that
some
frequency to be
without
able
it,
to
yeah.
keep it going like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know, they are calling out, and the contractor's open to, you know, correcting things when there's an issue.
Yeah.
And so they're really seeing the day to day and, you know, able to document, and
Yeah.
it's well worth it. I think on
Absolutely
certain
necessary on
projects.
those types of projects, yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
Josh.
Have you had any communication with the state, further on the roundabout construction?
Not much. I did call the project manager the state has assigned for that. And that was probably 2 weeks ago, probably not long after I talked to you up the road there. And she didn't have much there other than to say the construction company was hoping end of May. They were waiting for utilities to be moved. Well, they showed up. I do know, Crooker has that job. Cody's gonna oversee that one largely. And they were down there today marking stuff out with their surveyor.
Yeah, I saw all the new
So I
markings
think they're getting
today.
close. I don't know if the utilities have all been moved at this point, but I think Cody was saying they were expecting to really land down there within the next week and a half or two.
Mhm.
Or potentially, they say the
Yeah, I'm
15th.
people are still asking questions
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
traffic pattern.
Yeah, it's on my radar to get in touch with them. I prefer that information come from the DOT
Right,
project.
it should come
manager.
from the DOT.
And then I can help forward that out to the public. I know we've had a couple folks reach out and say, can we get updates on that like we do the other? And to the extent that we get the information.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they will provide it when you get it, so.
I have hope that it'll be available because we've just how Crooker communicated with us. So hopefully that's similar on that.
It would be nice, because, yeah, you're gonna get a lot of questions.
Yes, I think there'll be some increased truck traffic in and out of that Camden Plaza. I think they're setting up to have that be part of the laydown area.
Yep.
So in case you're
Oh,
wondering. see that
okay,
happen.
that's, they're doing it there, yeah.
Yeah.
Possibly. All right, sweet spot.
But it's slated for the summer?
Yes.
Yeah,
right
they're
on.
gonna start this
Soon.
month.
Yeah.
Very soon.
I think they'd love to be out there probably as soon as they can on that one too,
Yeah.
just because of where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a sense for how long they expect. I think they still have to be done by the end of November period. But I don't think they envision it taking that
I
long.
think they wanna move. Another question, as we move forward, coming in the summer here and people start putting their sandwich boards out. Just want to make sure that we're following sign ordinance and making sure all our sidewalks are handicapped accessible. People don't have their signs in the way, so.
We've been chatting
a
with
good
Mike
point.
about the sign ordinance lately, so we'll make sure it's on his radar to kind of inspect that from time to time and
Yeah.
make sure the permits have been had and.
And it's
Get a little crowded
it's
down there.
really helped to have whoever put out the walkway signs is great.
Great. Yep.
Yeah, it does
Those-
slow people down. That's-
It
Those shouldn't be
does.
out in the way of things, hopefully, and we're there at least
Nice
until
and
we get the
visible.
crosswalks painted. I figured
Yeah.
it was good to have those down. We
Yeah,
have
that's
Really good.
most of those came through a program the state had last year, and we
Mhm.
were able to get those mostly for free. We got a couple
They're,
already.
they're nice, they're visible, you can't miss
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Well, they need to not miss them.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, so.
I think that's it.
All good,
I
yeah.
could keep going. but
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
Well, I won't prolong it any, I was gonna comment and they beat me to it. Yeah, that was it was a nice afternoon, with all the folks there, looking into the project and whatnot. So it was a good crowd and, well, again, thanks
Be
to
in this week's paper, but it'll be in next.
next week, yeah. But again, thanks to Andy's taking a lot of this on his shoulders and there's a lot to handle down there and I see him, I mean, he's down there every day, several times a day, even with the liaison, they still put a lot of time down there, so kudos to him and we appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Did you
So-
want to say anything about this, Dan? You were at
Oh,
the meeting.
oh, Andy and I went to the
Yeah.
RSU, was it 48 now? 48, budget meeting last night. And
Yeah.
it was a combined 3 towns. So the towns, essentially it's just one entity now, right? Single entity.
Yeah.
And, it was a pretty pretty straightforward. I mean, to me, the sort of the thing that impressed me was the initial PowerPoint presentation by Lindsay, because essentially it's the stuff on the back of the, no, the other page.
This one.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
she went through them and she said, these are the questions that I'm hearing from everybody.
Okay.
And so I want to talk about them. And so she went through each of them and there was virtually no questions from the
The only question that came
The
up was
voter.
later on about the additional local that's beyond the EPS model, and they asked the question, I think, was what is the EPS model?
yeah, exactly.
Um,
So,
It was,
yeah, so there really was no questions and their vote was like 64 to
56-1 for the most part
Right.
on most of
Yeah,
those.
so there was, I mean, it was just overwhelming support for what they did. You can go through it and you can see what the savings, they
thank you, Dan,
they detail what the savings were for being breaking away from the AOF.
Yes.
And it's
yeah.
meaningful.
Good to see.
And
Yeah.
Okay,
and there's some one-time transition funds that they needed to spend, but the sense is that, you know, there's savings and it seemed a lot less contentious with those three towns. They seem to
Okay,
get along pretty well together. So,
that's great.
Hopefully, yeah.
Thank you
it
for
works
going.
out.
sure.
Yeah, thank you for providing the information, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Great. Well, with that, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Oh, right.
Go South.
All right, I think, who do you want? Who did you get? All those in favor? We are adjourned.